When did a stupid coworker try to sabotage you and accidentally expose their own affair? Story 1. I used to work in real estate marketing, and one of our agents, Melissa, had it out for me from day one. She thought I was after her position. I wasn't, and made it her personal mission to sabotage every campaign I touched. One day, she went to our boss and claimed I'd been stealing leads and rerouting them to my personal network. Obviously, I don't even have a network. I was just making better graphics and driving traffic. Still, the boss calls me in, furious. I'm about to get formally written up when he says, "Melissa showed me the emails you sent to clients behind her back." I'm confused. Then he pulls up one of the emails. It's a forwarded Gmail message, supposedly from my account, with links to MLS listings and a request to contact me instead of her. Except, it's full of weird formatting and spelled my name wrong. Even my email address was off. I ask if I can see the metadata. He agrees, probably thinking I'm just stalling. Guess what? She'd forwarded emails she sent herself, edited the text, and tried to frame me. But in her rush, she forgot to delete her own signature at the bottom of one email thread. And even worse, one of the links was to a private listing only her boyfriend's account had access to. That boyfriend? Our married regional manager. The boss froze. I didn't even have to say anything else. Melissa was put on probation, but once HR got wind of the affair, it snowballed. The manager was reassigned, she was let go amicably, and I got a raise. All because she couldn't be bothered to delete her own damn footer. Story 2. Back when I worked in IT, there was a guy named Travis who thought he was God's gift to tech support. In reality, he was lazy, condescending, and always trying to make others look incompetent. I was new, so he targeted me hard, questioning my tickets, undoing fixes I made, and accidentally misreporting my completion logs. One day, I noticed our shared Jira dashboard had edits on tasks I'd marked as completed, stuff I knew I'd finished. So I set up a basic logging script to track changes and IPs. 2 weeks later, I had a full list of changes from his terminal. Armed with that, I went to the department head and asked if we could have a private review. Travis got called in. Mid-meeting, he storms out yelling, "She's just trying to make me look bad so she can keep flirting with Colin behind my back." Colin is our network engineer. Married, quiet, barely talks to anyone. Everyone goes dead silent. I'm stunned. My boss is stunned. And Travis realizes too late that he just said something no one knew, not even HR. Turns out Travis had been cheating on his wife with Colin's wife. They met at a company retreat last year. She worked in our satellite office. He thought Colin and I were involved and snapped. Guess who got fired for both tampering and the affair? Travis. HR didn't play around. Colin never said a word, just looked at him and walked out. Story 3. I worked at a bakery chain where everyone knew each other's business. I was the assistant manager, and one of the newer hires, Bethany, kept telling staff I was skimming the till. The gossip reached corporate, so they scheduled a surprise audit. I was panicking, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. What if someone had actually made a mistake? Turns out, no discrepancy on my shifts. But on hers, there were multiple small withdrawals with no receipts. Corporate flagged it. Bethany doubled down and claimed I was clocking in under her name to hide theft. She was crying during the review. HR decided to pull security footage from a day she insisted I'd done it. Instead of seeing me, they watched her sneak into the back and shove something into her purse, and then kiss the district supervisor who was visiting that morning. They had no idea there were still motion capture cameras from the renovation. The district guy was married to the head of HR. Bethany didn't just lose her job. She triggered a full investigation across 3 locations and 2 marriages imploded. I just kept baking. Story 4. At a PR firm I interned at, my manager Amanda was obsessed with her reputation. She also hated being upstaged. I once got a feature placed in a major magazine, and she told the CEO she had secured it. I didn't mind. I was just there for the experience. But things went sour when Amanda tried to blame me for a leaked client contract. She said I emailed a draft to the press. Legal got involved. I was called into a conference room with HR, legal counsel, and Amanda sitting smugly. Then they showed the email. It was real, sent from my email, but I knew instantly it was spoofed. I used 2-factor and had no log of it in my outbox. I calmly asked, "What IP was the email sent from?" The IT guy pulled it up. It was traced to Amanda's IP. She tried to pivot, but the nail in the coffin. The email had been forwarded to one address not in the press list. It was a personal Gmail account, registered under the name Marcy Blake. That was the name Amanda used in her old escort profile from college. She must have forgotten it was still tied to some contacts. The CEO excused me from the room and told me later, "You have no idea how much she just cost herself." She was gone the next day. Story 5. In a law office I worked at as a junior paralegal, My colleague Jeremy hated that I got more FaceTime with clients. He was jealous that I once got mentioned in a positive client review online. So one day, he accidentally CC'd a client on an internal email chain where he claimed I had lied about filing a motion on time. He wrote, "I fixed it. Again. Someone has to clean up her messes." Except, the client responded. And the client wasn't supposed to get that email, sure. But worse, Jeremy didn't realize the thread included a PDF attachment. A completely unrelated one. A romantic weekend itinerary to an Airbnb with a confirmation under the name Mr. and Mrs. R. Jeremy is single, but Mrs. Rhea, our senior partner's wife. Turns out, Jeremy was sleeping with the boss's wife and booked a getaway using his own work email. It was saved in the same drafts folder he sent from. The fallout was swift. The senior partner didn't just fire Jeremy. He personally dragged him out of the building. There was yelling. Security got involved. He divorced his wife within the month. And me? I got promoted. Jeremy exposed more than he bargained for. Story 6. I worked at a non-profit where the office politics were somehow worse than corporate. My coworker Lindsay was the golden girl. Always buddy-buddy with leadership, always hosting baby showers, and always undermining anyone who might outshine her. I started managing our donor database and noticed she'd accidentally delete my entries. Then she'd swoop in and say, "Don't worry, I already followed up with them." Eventually, our biggest donor, a local business mogul, sent an email directly to our director, furious about inappropriate messages from our team. The screenshots showed someone asking him to donate more than money. Guess whose email it was from? Mine. I was mortified, but I knew I didn't send that. I'd never even contacted that donor directly. It looked into it and confirmed the messages were sent from Lindsay's computer while logged into my profile. She had my login because she once helped with a spreadsheet when I was on vacation. But here's the twist. While reviewing her email activity, IT found she had been corresponding with a board member, and they weren't discussing budgets. Screenshots, love notes, explicit photos, plans to meet during volunteer weekends. The board member? Married, twice Lindsay's age, a church elder. The fallout? She got fired. He resigned. Human Resources instituted mandatory tech security training, and I got a personal apology and a new password. Story 7. In my old job at a retail chain's head office, we had to collaborate across teams. Michelle from merchandising made that unbearable. She constantly delayed projects, blamed others, and once accused me of hiding data to make her look bad. She sent a report to our VP claiming I had withheld supplier price adjustments. Her evidence? Screenshots of an Excel file with no updated prices. Only, she forgot to remove the metadata tab. It showed she had edited the sheet 10 minutes before sending it. But what made things explode? Her email chain included her forwarding the doc to someone named Sandy Home. The VP asked who that was. Turns out Sandy was the alias of a regional manager's wife. Michelle had been copying documents and emailing them to that address. IT pulled full logs, not just confidential pricing info, but calendar invites for secret meetups and notes like, "Tell him you're on a supplier visit." They were having an affair and covering it with fake travel expenses. VP was livid. Legal got involved. Michelle resigned in shame, and the manager's wife filed for divorce within 2 weeks, all because she tried to doctor a spreadsheet. Story 8. When I worked at a startup, our team was only 12 people, so every misstep was obvious. Devin, one of the project leads, had a grudge against me after I got invited to present at a conference instead of him. He started passive-aggressively correcting my code, even sending Slack messages to the CTO, implying I wasn't pulling my weight. Then one day, he accidentally copied me on a message to his girlfriend, complaining about covering for my boss's brat just so I can get approval for Thailand. I was confused. Turns out he was trying to frame me for skipping QA reviews, so the CTO would question my reliability and approve Devin's request for remote work abroad. But Devin had also been covering for someone else, his actual boss, who had been leaving early to meet up with Devin's girlfriend. The Slack messages, dozens of them, were all there. He sent screenshots to her, bragging about working the system, but forgot that syncing included his work folder. I printed the Slack logs, handed them to HR, and watched the office implode. 2 firings, 1 breakup. I got promoted to Devin's role. Story 9. I worked in advertising, and we were pitching to a huge cosmetics brand. My coworker Claire wanted to lead the pitch, but the director asked me to do it since I had industry experience. Claire was furious, and 2 days before the meeting, she sent our client a correction email saying I was being replaced due to concerns about my background in beauty. She CC'd our boss. She thought this would embarrass me. What she didn't expect? The client replied directly to the boss, saying, We don't want to work with anyone who'd body shame their own team, especially not someone who sends emails from their husband's company laptop. Wait, what? Attached were screenshots. Claire had accidentally used her husband's business email, which was still logged in on her phone. And when the client clicked the auto signature, they saw all the info, including an earlier forwarded message that said, "Tell them you fired her. I'll handle the rest. Just keep it quiet." The her was me. And the sender? A guy named Ryan, our client's brand representative. Claire was cheating on her husband with our client and trying to get me fired to cover it up. She didn't just get fired. Her husband showed up at the office with a suitcase. Story 10. I worked the night shift at a hospital call center. One of our coordinators, Tyler, was always trying to flirt his way out of doing his job, but he really didn't like being outperformed, especially not by someone younger. I started getting prank calls during shift, fake emergencies, bogus patient follow-ups. I reported them, but nothing happened until one night a call came in from inside the building. Security traced the number back to Tyler's office. He said someone used his phone while he was out, but surveillance showed otherwise. Him alone in his office, laughing, placing the call, and sending a message to someone labeled Angel. Security reviewed the logs and found dozens of calls to the same number. The number belonged to a nurse from another department. She was married to one of the hospital's surgeons. Apparently, they'd been meeting during Tyler's shifts, and prank calling me was their inside joke. The nurse was transferred. Tyler was fired, and the surgeon filed for divorce 2 weeks later. I just kept answering the phones, a little less politely. Story 11. Back when I was a hotel front desk supervisor, I had a coworker named Jason who was incredibly petty. He hated that guests complimented me more often and started claiming I gave out free upgrades just to get good reviews. One morning, a manager pulls me aside and says, "There's been a complaint." Apparently, Jason told a VIP guest that I'd offered them a suite for favors. The guest was confused and reported it. I'm fuming. I ask for security footage. The hotel has hallway cams, and the guest's check-in happened on my shift. The footage shows Jason himself swiping into the suite before the guest arrived with a woman who wasn't his wife. They stayed in there for over an hour, left, and then he manually flagged the room as ready in the system. He had been using the suites after hours and tried to frame me to cover his tracks. When HR dug further, they found he'd also been charging minibar fees to corporate guests and pocketing the cash. And the woman? A travel representative from another hotel chain, also married. Jason got fired. The other hotel pulled out of their partnership. I got an apology and a promotion. Story 12. I worked at a wedding planning firm, and my coworker Sophia was obsessed with our social media presence. She hated that one of my posts went viral and started a petty war. Fake reports, password changes, the works. Then one day, she told our boss that I'd been stealing photos from Pinterest and pretending they were ours. I was called in for a disciplinary review. I showed the original shoot files, timestamps, model release forms, and raw edits, all legit. But while reviewing Sophia's email trail, since she filed the complaint with screenshots, IT found something weird. She had emailed the photos to someone named Luna.events 2 days before submitting the complaint. Turns out Luna was a fake business Instagram Sophia secretly ran on the side, using our company's content. Even worse, she'd been contacting brides from our own roster to undercut prices and offer freelance services. The affair twist? One of the grooms she worked with was her sister's fiancé. She sent him flirty messages under the Luna alias. He recognized her voice during a call and exposed everything. She was fired, and her sister disowned her. My boss made me head of social media. Story 13. I worked for a logistics company that handled high-value shipments. One day, a package worth $20,000 was misrouted and lost for over a week. My coworker Brad accused me of changing the tracking info. I'd never touched the order. He went to the regional manager, showed logs from our internal system, but the timestamps were odd. I knew I was on my lunch break then. When the manager ran a full system check, they discovered the tracking data had been manually edited from Brad's user ID. He used my login as the editor but forgot to switch IP addresses, and our network tracks those separately. But here's where it gets good. The package wasn't really lost. It had been redirected to a storage unit rented under Brad's girlfriend's name. Except, she wasn't really his girlfriend. She was married to a police officer who got the notification from the shipping company about the reroute. Brad got arrested for attempted theft. The officer filed for divorce. I got a raise and a letter of apology. Story 14. At my old job in a healthcare billing firm, my coworker Tanya was always paranoid someone would steal her role. I was assigned to assist her temporarily, and within a week she started emailing our boss saying I was modifying sensitive patient invoices. She attached screenshots showing my name tied to a bunch of red-flagged entries. The boss looped in compliance. We all sat down for a tense meeting. Then IT pulled the system logs, and it turned out the screenshots were from Tanya's private desktop, not our secure portal. She had created dummy invoices using patient IDs from old cases and forged my name. But the bombshell? One of the invoices was real and flagged months ago. It had been deleted after hours from Tanya's own terminal. And when the audit team looked closer, they discovered she had been funneling refunds into a bank account under the name Carla D. That was her ex-girlfriend, who had taken out a restraining order against her a year ago. Tanya was sending her hush money to keep quiet about their past, because she was now engaged to a doctor at our partner hospital. The whole thing unraveled. The engagement ended, Tanya got fired, and a fraud investigation was launched. Story 15. I worked as a junior copywriter at a big ad agency. My manager, Evan, always made me redo my work, then presented it as his own. He once told me, "You're here to learn, not shine." We were up for an award, and I'd written a jingle for a cereal brand that tested incredibly well. Evan submitted it under his name. I was annoyed, but whatever, until I got an email from the brand rep, thanking me personally. Turns out Evan forwarded my draft with my name still in the metadata, then tried to erase it later, but their creative director noticed. The agency started questioning things. That's when Evan panicked and accused me of stealing pitch material from another agency. He showed evidence, old drafts in a shared folder that looked suspiciously similar to a competitor's copy. But they were too similar, because he had literally copied the other agency's work from a private email thread with his mistress, who happened to work there. He sent her our campaign as inspiration and asked for feedback, then tried to reverse engineer it into a setup. She got dragged into the investigation. Her company found out. Both got fired. I got credit for the campaign and an industry award. Story 16. At a small architecture firm, I worked under a lead designer named Cal. He was flashy, overconfident, and incredibly territorial. When I got assigned a boutique hotel redesign that he wanted, he suddenly became hostile. He told the client I plagiarized the design from a competitor, even showed them images from a random portfolio online that looked vaguely similar to my sketches. The client panicked and almost pulled out. But here's what Cal didn't know. My original sketches were uploaded to our cloud drive weeks earlier, complete with timestamps and layered Photoshop files. The supposed plagiarized version? Cal had submitted them to his girlfriend, who worked at the competitor firm, under his own name. Turns out he'd stolen my early drafts and pitched them to the competitor in hopes of jumping ship for a better-paying position, and using my work as his portfolio. He just didn't think the two companies would ever cross paths. The competitor recognized the duplicate designs when they saw the scandal unfolding online. They exposed him. Cal was fired. His girlfriend dumped him. And I got sole credit for the project, which went on to win a design award. Story 17. I worked in customer service at a large telecom company. One day, a chargeback from a VIP client landed in our queue, and my coworker Dana claimed I had misapplied the billing credits. She went straight to the department head and said I had cost the company thousands. But she was sloppy. The internal audit showed the adjustment had been processed under her credentials, not mine. She claimed the system must have glitched. While IT was reviewing her logins, they found she had also accessed several private client accounts, ones not assigned to her. At first, they thought it was just nosiness. Then they noticed a pattern. All the accounts belonged to a group of small business owners in one district. Turns out Dana had been having an affair with one of them, and had been erasing late fees, comping data plans, and editing notes to hide the interactions. She even changed one contact name to field rep to avoid suspicion. The kicker? Her husband worked in fraud prevention for our company. He was brought into the meeting by accident when HR misread the report and saw her name on the list. The office was silent. She walked out and never came back. Story 18. I worked for a catering company, and our event planner, Rachel, was a control freak. She hated when I made suggestions that clients liked, especially since I was just the kitchen lid. One day, we lost a major client, a high-end wedding, and Rachel told everyone I'd caused it by yelling at the bride during a tasting. I was floored. That never happened. The client, a chill couple. I reached out, apologizing if I had come off wrong. They responded confused, said I was the only person who listened to their dietary needs. When I asked why they canceled, they said Rachel had emailed them demanding a loyalty bonus for booking and threatened to drop their date if they didn't reply within 24 hours. The email came from her work account but was signed Kara. We had no one named Kara. Digging further, we found Kara was the alias Rachel used for a side business, a rogue planning service where she poached clients from our firm and double-charged them. But the bride forwarded the original message, and guess what? The CC list accidentally included Rachel's personal Gmail and her married boyfriend's. His wife was one of the bridesmaids. By the end of the week, Rachel was gone, the wedding was back on, and I got a thank you tip from the couple. Story 19. When I worked at a tech startup, we had this bro culture developer named Mike who treated QA staff like garbage. I was in QA. He once told our CTO that I kept flagging clean code to feel important. Then one day, during a major product demo, the app crashed. Hard. Mike blamed me, claiming I'd deleted key error logs to cover my own screw-up. The CTO asked me to recreate the crash. I did. Same bug. And I proved that I had flagged the exact issue a week prior, with a timestamp, a bug ticket, and a Slack ping. Mike had marked it not a priority. Then we checked his commit logs. That's when we saw something wild. He'd pushed a line of debug code that sent encrypted data to an outside server. Why? That server belonged to a marketing analytics agency, where his girlfriend worked. They'd been scraping user behavior metrics before release and planned to pitch the data to competitors for a bonus. She didn't even work in tech. He tried to delete the logs before the CTO saw them. But Git doesn't lie. He got walked out, I got promoted to QA lead. Story 20. My coworker Hannah and I were both nurses at a pediatric clinic. She was popular with the doctors, but often careless, especially with patient notes. One afternoon, a child had a bad allergic reaction. Hannah told the parents that I had failed to log the allergy in the system. I was stunned. I always triple-check. The child was okay, thankfully, but I was called in for a disciplinary meeting. While reviewing the logs, the IT nurse noticed the allergy was recorded under my ID, then removed 3 hours later by another user. That user? Hannah. She said she thought it was a duplicate entry and meant to clean it up, but HR pulled up her personal phone logs, per protocol during medical reviews, and they found a string of texts between her and the father of the child. Some flirty, some explicit. Turns out they'd been secretly seeing each other, and Hannah was trying to avoid suspicion by making it seem like I'd made the mistake. She didn't want the mom, also a patient, asking questions about why she had reviewed the chart that day. Her license was suspended. I was cleared. The mom filed for divorce. Story 21. I worked in a mid-sized law office, doing behind-the-scenes case research. One paralegal, Nancy, treated me like I was beneath her. She had a habit of editing my reports before submitting them to partners, usually inserting errors that made me look sloppy. One day, I was pulled into a partner's office and told I had mixed up confidential client documents. Highly sensitive stuff. Nancy handed over a printed report with my name on it and the wrong info attached. I was about to panic until I asked, "Can I see the original file?" Turns out she'd replaced the attachment. The metadata in the firm's internal system showed she renamed a file, copied it over my report, and re-exported it. She still might have gotten away with it, except she used a shared folder on the admin drive to hide the original. And that folder had something else, a folder titled Taxes 2022. Inside were screenshots of private chats between Nancy and our married senior partner, flirty messages, photos, and talk about setting up a consulting LLC to bill fake hours and funnel the cash to a shared account. Once the partners saw that, Nancy was let go the next morning. The partner's wife filed for divorce. I was quietly moved into a better department. Story 22. I worked at a dental lab where precision is everything. One coworker, Greg, had seniority but hated that I got consistent praise. He started accidentally mislabeling my trays, switching patient IDs to make it look like I was careless. Then one day, a crown was returned by a high-paying client. Furious it didn't match specs. Greg blamed me in front of the whole team. But the QR code on the box told the real story. The label had been reprinted just hours before shipping, from Greg's station. He forgot our printer logs, timestamps, and user IDs. He'd scanned my tray, changed the patient ID, and tried to pin the mistake on me. Here's where it unraveled. He had been rushing because he left work early. Our boss checked the schedule. Greg had clocked out 3 hours before the shift ended. Guess what showed up on the company dash cam that night? Greg kissing one of our dental reps in the parking lot. The rep was married. So was Gregor. His wife also worked with us in HR. The fallout? Spectacular. He got fired. She filed for separation. The dental rep got transferred. I got a call from the owner himself apologizing for the drama. Story 23. I worked in marketing for a fitness brand. My coworker Kayla was always friendly, until we both applied for the same internal promotion. She suddenly turned cold. 2 weeks later, my email mysteriously sent a link to a fake giveaway page to our full mailing list. The page looked like a phishing scam. Kayla flagged it to the director and said, "It's a shame she let something like this slip. It looked bad." until IT pulled the logs and discovered the email originated from an IP address in our conference room, before I even came into work. Security footage confirmed Kayla had logged into my computer using a stolen sticky note with my password. I know. But she wasn't alone. A man walked in halfway through, one of our external creative consultants. She kissed him, on camera, and they chatted about celebrating early. He was married to our CFO's daughter. Kayla had been trying to sabotage me and climb her way up through an affair. Instead, she got booted. The consultant lost his contract. The CFO personally called to thank me for being oddly helpful. I got the promotion. Story 24. In a publishing house, I was the junior editor. My supervisor, Tanya, constantly undermined me, changing my notes, rephrasing feedback, and submitting it as hers. One day, she accused me of missing a crucial plot inconsistency in a best-selling author's manuscript. She made a scene in a team meeting, implying I was out of my depth. I had emails showing I flagged that exact issue, and she had marked it low priority, but she claimed I was falsifying timestamps. When our managing editor pulled server logs, they found Tanya had deleted my original markup and replaced it with her own, but forgot that autosave tracked revisions. Worse, in one version, she left a note that said, "Keep it wrong. Let her choke." It would have ended there, but her inbox was also under review. Inside, dozens of romantic emails to the author. He was married, with kids. Their emails had pet names, hotel receipts, even a Google Doc with erotic scenes they were co-writing. The author's publisher dropped him. Tanya resigned. I was quietly promoted to full editor and got a thank you from the author's wife, who found out after we returned the emails per legal protocol. Story 25. I used to work as a flight attendant. Scheduling was tight, and everyone had to bid for routes based on seniority. One coworker, Lexi, always got prime assignments, even when it didn't line up. I started noticing I'd be accidentally dropped from flights or put on standby. When I asked scheduling, they said I must have canceled those legs myself, but I hadn't. Then came the kicker. I missed out on a European route I'd earned fair and square. Lexi got it. That's when I asked for audit logs. Turns out Lexi had a friend in scheduling. They were switching assignments manually, logging in under my ID with a reset password Lexi had requested, claiming I'd lost access. HR began investigating, and while looking into her communications, they uncovered something else. Lexi and the scheduler were having an affair, and the scheduler married. With a child on the way, HR forwarded the messages to legal. The scheduler was terminated. Lexi lost her job. The airline issued me a formal apology and awarded me a double-length international bid. Sometimes karma flies first class. Story 26. At a pharmaceutical company, I worked as a clinical documentation specialist. My coworker, Julian, always acted superior because he came from a medical background, while I came from IT. He hated that I consistently found discrepancies he missed. One day, a senior executive asked about a corrupted batch of trial data. Julian claimed I mishandled the backup protocol, wiping a week of records. I was blindsided, but I had an ace. I'd recently implemented an automated sync script that backed everything up hourly to a hidden directory just in case. I restored the files, every change, timestamped, including one folder Julian tried to delete, which contained unauthorized test versions of our drug protocol. He was testing formula variations without permission, and saving them under random names. But here's the twist. One of the variations was labeled for AP. The exec asked, "Who's AP?" It turned out to be a clinical trial subject, the girlfriend of Julian's roommate. Julian had been slipping her modified doses to prove a theory and impress her, behind his roommate's back. HR called it tampering. Legal called it a liability nightmare. He was escorted out. I got a raise and my backup script became mandatory across departments. Story 27. I worked in the entertainment industry, managing backstage logistics for touring artists. One production assistant, Darla, was always desperate to look important. She once lied about handling an artist's contract just to get a selfie. Before a major festival, she told the head of operations I'd failed to confirm stage power requirements, causing thousands in potential delay costs. She even printed out an email thread where I supposedly ignored requests. Except, I never saw those emails. When I opened the thread, I noticed the address it came from wasn't official. It was a spoof domain, staging.com, instead of staging.com. She made it look like I'd dropped the ball. I showed it. They traced the email to her personal laptop, but it gets better. She had also used that same spoof email to contact one of the artist's reps to request backstage access for a journalist. The journalist? Her girlfriend, who wasn't supposed to be anywhere near backstage due to a previous incident involving that same artist. a cheating scandal that had made headlines. Darla just wanted them to meet again, secretly. Instead, she got blacklisted from 3 major tour companies. Her girlfriend dumped her for risking their privacy. I got a bonus for saving the festival's reputation. Story 28. At a boutique PR agency, we handled crisis management for celebrities and politicians. My coworker Liam wanted to get in with a new high-profile client, a state senator's son caught in a scandal. I was assigned to the case instead, which Liam didn't like. Suddenly, anonymous leaks about me surfaced internally, claiming I had ties to a rival party. Someone even sent a photo of me from college, cropped to make it look like I was at a protest I'd never attended. It was emailed to the senator's team, but whoever edited it was lazy. They left XIF metadata in the image. Turns out the photo had been modified on Liam's home computer. But what buried him? The photo folder was synced to his cloud, and the parent folder was titled Alt PR Anna Drafts. Anna was another client, a pop singer we had just signed. A married pop singer. Within that folder were love letters, suggestive pics, and one marketing plan that included the line, Phase 2, leak fake breakup rumors. He was having an affair with her and planning to weaponize it for her comeback. He sabotaged himself trying to sabotage me. Fired. Sued. Client dropped us. I was promoted to Director of Crisis. Story 29. I used to work in luxury real estate. One of our agents, Chloe, constantly bragged about her sales, but she cut corners constantly and treated assistants like dirt. When I caught a listing error that saved a $3 million deal, she didn't thank me. She blamed me for delaying it. Weeks later, our regional VP asked why Chloe's monthly numbers were so inflated. She claimed I had been logging fake viewings under her name to pad her stats and get her in trouble. I was called into a meeting, but I had nothing to hide. I kept detailed call records and logged all my appointments in a personal calendar. That's when something strange happened. The IT guy pulled IP logs and found that most of the fake entries came from a Miami condo complex, not our office. Turns out Chloe had been using her boyfriend's vacation property to run a second off-the-books real estate business with stolen client data, rerouting leads, offering secret showings, and charging private fees. Her boyfriend? A married developer and a client of our firm. Chloe was not only fired, but also reported to the real estate board. Her license was suspended, and the developer's wife left him publicly, with Chloe's name in the court filing. Story 30. In a software company, I was managing UI design. A developer named Ross never liked me. He thought, designers just make things pretty, and constantly tried to get me removed from projects. He finally thought he had me when a client presentation crashed. Slides were missing, mock-ups broken. He loudly told the room I had uploaded a corrupted file and didn't test it. What he didn't know, I had used version control and synced everything to the cloud. The mock-ups were fine the night before, but the latest upload was tampered with. Someone renamed files and swapped them. I pulled server history. Ross had accessed the folder at 2:47 a.m. and replaced 2 files. But worse, he also copied client assets into a private folder labeled Torrents Tech. When IT checked that name, it belonged to a startup run by his ex-girlfriend, a UX consultant for one of our competitors. He had been sending her our designs behind everyone's back, hoping she'd take him back if he helped her land a pitch. Instead, he got fired. The client stayed. His ex didn't take him back. She forwarded the whole thing to legal to protect herself. I was asked to lead the next redesign. Story 31. I was working in municipal government, public relations specifically. My coworker Sherry was all smiles in front of our supervisor, but constantly undermined people behind the scenes. She wanted to be the face of the department. When I was put in charge of a mayoral press release about infrastructure spending, she waited until the day before the deadline and sent an email to the mayor's office saying I'd plagiarized old statements from another city's budget rollout. She even attached a side-by-side document with evidence. Except, she'd lifted my draft and submitted it under her name, to her boyfriend, who worked in a rival office across the state. I had proof I wrote it 2 weeks earlier. I showed version history, metadata, and the original calendar invite where I pitched it. But what destroyed her? Her email chain with her boyfriend, where she bragged about stealing the text to help him look good, got pulled into an open records request. The mayor's office released it. Local reporters caught wind. Her boyfriend got suspended. And Sherry? She was reassigned to the Public Works Department. Basically political exile. Story 32. I worked at a college bookstore, and one of my coworkers, Josh, was obsessed with being in charge even though he wasn't a supervisor. He constantly corrected people, gave orders, and micromanaged the inventory. One day, our manager accused me of misreporting textbook returns. a big deal since it affected supplier reimbursements. Josh had submitted a spreadsheet proving I'd logged over 50 books that didn't match inventory. But I knew I'd double-checked everything. When I pulled the POS logs, I noticed something weird. Some return entries were processed before the shift started. Impossible unless someone faked it. Security footage showed Josh clocking in early and entering codes at my register. He thought no one would check timestamps. While reviewing the camera data, the tech also caught him kissing our married student services rep behind the customer counter during a break. She denied it until we showed her the footage. He was fired. She transferred. I was formally cleared and promoted to inventory lead. Story 33. In a production studio, I worked in sound editing. My coworker Vince was a flashy video guy who always talked big but couldn't handle criticism. When a director praised my audio design over his trailer cut, Vince flipped. A week later, I was called into HR over an audio sabotage complaint. He claimed I'd embedded a high-pitched noise into the final video as a prank and sent over a file that proved it. Thing is, I'd never touched that render. I pulled my working folder, export history, and project file. The frequency spike wasn't present. Turns out Vince had added the sound himself to frame me, but he screwed up. The audio clip was labeled Reverb Test Jen in his cache. Jen was our intern. When questioned, she said Vince asked her how to simulate a bug in an export. She gave him a filter and assumed it was for testing. HR didn't just fire him. They forwarded everything to our client, who uncovered a bigger issue. Vince had been moonlighting for a rival studio, sending them early drafts. And he was sleeping with their junior editor. Studio politics went nuclear. I was put in charge of post-production. Story 34. I worked in a private security firm, handling logistics and communications. One day, a training file mysteriously leaked to a competitor, one we were bidding against for a big city contract. My coworker Tony, who had always resented that I got assigned the high-clearance jobs, told management I'd been bragging about inside knowledge during after-hours drinks. He even got another guy to back him up. I didn't say a word. I just asked to review badge logs. Turns out Tony had accessed the file from our shared drive after hours using a guest terminal and sent it via his personal Gmail. Our cybersecurity lead traced it back. But the real kicker? The Gmail account was also tied to a string of messages with someone named Caro. Screenshots, travel plans, and romantic selfies at a hotel. Caro was the wife of the head of the competing firm. He was trying to sleep his way into a joint venture by feeding her sensitive data and using me as a fall guy. Management dropped him fast. The competitor was disqualified. I got put on point for the city contract. Story 35. At an insurance company, I was doing data validation on new clients. My colleague Amber, who had been at the company longer, got irritated when I started getting projects she thought were hers. She began submitting duplicate reports by mistake that conflicted with mine. Then she filed a complaint saying I'd altered coverage estimates to make my reports look more accurate. But I'd already emailed the reports to our compliance officer before she submitted hers. When they compared versions, they found mine were consistent. Amber's copies had been backdated, clumsily, with mismatched timestamps and copy-pasted headers. And then, while reviewing her recent logins, IT noticed she had accessed a client's profile dozens of times off hours, way more than necessary. Turns out, Amber was in a secret relationship with that client, a married small business owner, and was inflating his coverage, underreporting his claims, and modifying risk assessments to give him a discount. The affair was exposed during a compliance audit. Amber was terminated, the client was blacklisted, and I was asked to train new hires in fraud prevention. Story 36. I worked for a software company that created tools for remote teams. My coworker Bailey was jealous I got invited to a product feedback summit in New York. 2 days before the trip, she told HR I had been logging extra hours in our time tracking app while doing nothing. She even submitted screenshots showing me clocked in with 0 keystrokes. It looked bad, until IT pulled the raw logs and realized she had accessed my remote desktop from her machine using our admin override credentials, the kind only senior developers like her had. They initially thought she was just trying to frame me, but when reviewing her access history, they found she had been regularly logging into other people's machines and sending data dumps to a Dropbox folder. Inside that folder, a zipped archive of internal memos and dozens of emails to her partner, who worked for a startup we had just acquired. That partner was also her ex-professor, and very married to the head of the startup's board. She wasn't just sabotaging me. She was leaking our acquisition strategy to her affair partner to help him negotiate better exit terms. She was gone within 24 hours. I got a raise and the keynote spot in New York. Story 37. I worked at a wedding dress boutique where commissions were everything. My coworker Angela was cutthroat. She once told a bride I wasn't experienced enough to help with fittings, even though I'd been there 2 years. One day, our manager accused me of hiding VIP appointments in the calendar, making it look like I was booking them privately to steal clients. Angela backed it up with proof. Screen recordings of blocked-out bookings under my name. But she didn't realize I'd stopped using the old scheduling software 2 months earlier when I switched to a pilot system the manager asked me to test. The screen recordings were faked. She'd created dummy bookings under my username on the old system, hoping no one would remember I had moved on. While checking her computer for logs, IT also discovered a folder called Preferred Vendor Notes. Inside were back and forths between Angela and a photographer we often referred clients to, who also happened to be engaged to one of our seamstresses. Angela had been sneaking brides his way in exchange for weekend getaways and cash under the table, even suggesting he cut his fiancée loose after the summer rush. Her sabotage attempt exposed her side hustle and her affair in one shot. Fired. Blacklisted. Her ex-friend got promoted to lead seamstress. Story 38. I was the assistant manager at a popular coffee shop chain. My coworker Tyler was always late and blamed everyone else. When I started logging his tardiness, he tried to flip the script. He went to the district manager claiming I had been padding inventory numbers to make the store look profitable. He showed spreadsheets where I'd supposedly logged hundreds of dollars in phantom syrup orders. Except the spreadsheet he used was one I'd made and stored in my personal Google Drive. He had accessed it from the shared break room computer. What he didn't know is that my spreadsheet contained hidden notes and version history, including one labeled, "If Tyler touches this, print for HR." I printed it. While reviewing access logs, our DM also noticed Tyler had been placing last-minute emergency orders through a fake vendor email for milk and cups. The vendor? His girlfriend's LLC. She ran a drop shipping business and had no real inventory. He was billing us, she was collecting, and I was supposed to take the fall. Instead, they both got reported. Corporate opened a fraud case. Story 39. At a startup ad agency, our boss assigned me to pitch a cosmetics rebrand while my coworker Leah was out sick. When she returned, she was furious I'd landed the job. She started telling the creative director that I reused assets from a previous client, which would have been a breach of contract. She found slides on the shared drive that looked suspiciously like a past project. I knew I hadn't used them. I built everything from scratch, so I compared fonts, colors, even export patterns. The offending slides were actually Leah's from her own proposal months ago with new headers pasted on top. But while digging into her folder, we found more than slides. There was a hidden folder labeled Test Shoots, which wasn't strange until we opened it. Photo shoots of our current client's CEO in romantic beach settings. Selfies, dinner pics, some not safe for work. Turns out Leah was having an affair with the client's CEO and had tried to sabotage my pitch because she feared he'd like my version better than hers. She lost her job. The client? Quietly replaced their point of contact and stayed on. My rebrand got national traction. Story 40. In a private school where I taught math, one of the admin assistants, Paul, always acted like he was above the teachers. He once told a parent I lacked discipline because I didn't assign daily homework. He hated me after that parent complained about him instead. Then, suddenly, I was called into a disciplinary meeting over inappropriate conduct. Someone had submitted an anonymous complaint claiming I was texting students outside school hours. The screenshots showed a blurred-out number and vague messages like, "Don't tell anyone." But I don't text students. Ever. I requested a reverse lookup. Our IT guy traced the screenshots to a burner number connected to a Wi-Fi plan, registered under Paul's name. He'd faked the texts. But the real twist? That same burner number had also been used to message one of the moms. Flirty, inappropriate stuff, and ask her for photos. She came forward once she recognized the number. He had tried to frame me and was having a secret relationship with a parent whose kid he oversaw during after-school programs. He resigned for personal reasons the next day. I got a formal apology and extra classroom funding.